Chapter 31. Void. Summary. Some more perspective from the other half of the gang. Evil brain thoughts and Ghost Uno. Katsuki couldn't remember how long he ran through the streets before the others caught up with him, feet pounding hard on the ground as buildings whipped by. He didn't know what he was looking for, but he couldn't stop. Not when Ochako was gone. Izuku was gone. But they were gone. Long gone. They were out of sight for nearly 15 minutes, more than enough time for them to disappear. When the others did manage to catch up with him, he was silent, 100-yard stare off into the distance. He wasn't even sure where he was at this point. Guess he was wrong about the others doing what he said. Must have followed him. Dumbasses. But he could barely tell they were there over the pounding of his heart and the blood rushing in his ears and the fear. Rage. Rage. All he could feel now was the overwhelming, adrenaline-fueled rage at whoever had done this. Whoever had hurt two of the few people he somehow cared about was going to pay. When Katsuki decided to stomp off after Ochako and Izuku, Mina knew he wasn't in the mood to be followed. That's why they were going to have to be stealthy. Unfortunately, the two people she was left with didn't have a stealthy bone in their bodies. Neither did she, but at least she was trying. Surprisingly, when the three of them peeked down the alley, expecting to see Izuku and Ochako being berated by an angry Pomeranian, all they were met with was a statue-still Katsuki, looking down at an empty alley. Then, he started running. He was a fast runner, and no matter how loud they called out to him, he didn't so much as glance their way. Turn after turn, street after street, they ran until at last, Katsuki stopped. But when Mina saw his face, she almost wished he hadn't. The haunted blankness did not belong on their fiery friend's face. It was unsettling in a way Mina didn't know was possible. He's always been a pillar of strength and perseverance, even during their time captive. What had caused him to look like this? The sight was unsettling, but the blank look quickly morphed into rage. Overwhelming rage. Someone took them, Katsuki snarled out into the quiet street. It took Mina a second to process those horrible words. What do you mean? They weren't there, he choked out with contempt. There was blood in Ochako's shoe. Someone took them, and they are going to be sorry. Mina didn't want to believe it, but if Katsuki was saying it, they needed to get their friends back. Katsuki was right. Whoever had done this was going to pay. This wasn't like the last time they had been taken. They knew they weren't on Earth. They had access to their quirks, and they had made the mistake of not taking all of them. Mina liked to think that if Earth had the technology, the rest of the class would have hijacked a spaceship to go out and search for them when they were taken. Because if there's one thing that she knew about Class 1A, it was that they stuck together. The 5 of them, plus Mei, who, at this point, Mina would be petitioning to become an honorary member of Class 1A when they got home, just so happened to be taking an extended weekend away. A very long weekend. But in the end, they would make it back home. All of them. Mina could see the steely gazes of the other students. They were going to do this. Denki was the first to speak up, a little shaky, but determined nonetheless. How are we gonna find them? Katsuki grinned maniacally. We just have to put into practice everything that hobo-sensei taught us about situations like this. With more violence, of course. Just like always when he drifted, Izuku didn't really have control over when he came back. While he drifted, things seemed far away, like he wasn't really there. Sometimes it was nice to not be in his body, but other times he couldn't afford not to be. This was one of those times. So when he came back, he was determined to stay back. But he nearly lost his conviction as soon as his eyes keyed onto his surroundings. Bars. All around him. Bars. And bars could only mean one thing. A cage. He was in a cage. A cage just like before, only this one was smaller. Much, much smaller. Even if he wasn't completely bound, there was no way he could even sit up. It was much closer in size to a dog crate than one meant for a human. The bars in ceiling were so close, they were closing in, tighter and tighter, pressing into his lungs until the ache was so much he couldn't breathe past the gag. He was hyperventilating. No. Why was his body doing this? He couldn't be completely debilitated by a little claustrophobia. But was he really a hero in training? He still couldn't use his quirk. He was still a weak, useless, defenseless Deku. It was all his fault they had been taken. It was his fault Where was Ochako? The cage she was in was much too small to fit both of them. So where was she? Was she okay? His breath was picking up again, and Izuku couldn't help the pained whine that broke from his chest. His breathing stuttered when he heard a soft hum in response from behind him. He would recognize that voice from anywhere. Ochako. She was okay. While he couldn't see her, and he definitely wasn't able to flip around to face her, he was sure that it was her. His breathing began to level out slightly at the realization. They were still together. Ochako was still here, and the others would come for them, just like she said. But with that, they lapsed into silence, the gags preventing them from talking with each other in any meaningful way. But with the silence brought the return of his demanding thoughts, each horrible one screaming in his skull to be heard. That he was back in a cage again, the walls closing in, that he would waste away, that the two kidnappers would send them back to the original traffickers or send him to some alien sex trafficking ring. He could still feel ghosts of the green alien's touch on his skin, him helpless to stop them, even if it was only to put the gag on or carry him to this god's forsaken cage. He would have been helpless to fight back if they had tried anything. He was helpless. So weak and powerless, useless, quirkless. A soft, melodic hum brought him out of his spiral. He could hear the heavy sound of his breathing, but he focused on the quiet tune. It was familiar. As he listened, recognition came to him. It was the same song he sang to the Osiers that first lullaby night, the same one his mother sang to him as a child. The familiar melody lulled him into a calm, dazed state. It kept the self-hating, anxiety-inducing thoughts away. It made his eyelids fall heavy. It almost seemed to say, "Sleep. It will be okay. I'll deal with it all. All you have to do is rest." So he did. As he felt the void calling him, Izuku drifted into unconsciousness. When Izuku opened his eyes, he was met with black. But not the black of darkness. It was the black of emptiness, of void. His arms and legs were unbound, though his mouth was still covered, yet not with a disgusting gag, but a black shadow. Just like... He turned quickly to search the black, and he didn't have to search long before he came across 7.5 people sitting in the dark playing Uno? The woman he recognized as Nana, All Might's old mentor, turned to meet him with a soft, kind smile. "Come join us." She felt so warm and safe. Izuku didn't hesitate to sit next to her in the group, though he looked around the circle puzzled. He recognized all the figures around him from before, but the previous times he was here, it was all so mystical and otherworldly. Now, First was trying to sneak a peek at Banjo's hand, while Vestige All Might tried to manage his 20 cards. Definitely not mystical at all. Otherworldly, perhaps, only in how strange it was. "Sorry about the game," Nana said with a guilty smile. "While One for All is still locked away, there's not much we can do around here. Normally, we just watch your life like a soap opera, but somehow you managed to change that into a space soap opera. Like, seriously, what the fuck? Anyway, we can't watch you with the quirk locked away." Izuku stared in silent shock as Nana put down a red draw 2 card, and Six sent her a death glare at the 2 new additions to his hand. "Excuse him? But did she just say they all normally watched him?" "Not exactly sure what's happening with you in the real world right now, but we can tell you're freaking the fuck out. So First and I decided it was probably a good idea to bring you here after you passed out. You can join in next round. Don't need a mouth to play Uno after all. Well, except to call out Uno for your last card. Just slap First when you get Uno. That should suffice." She laid down a yellow switch direction card, and Six looked like he was plotting her murder. Izuku just... what on earth? Actually, he wasn't on Earth, so maybe that was why he had no fucking clue what in the 7 hells was going on here. One second, he was falling asleep in a cage to Ochako's humming. The next, he was watching 7.5 quirk ghosts play Uno. Admittedly, the Uno was preferable to real life right now, so he settled down and watched the game move along. In the end, second won, which elicited a lot of smug bragging before First reminded him of the apparent score. Wow, who knew First was so good at Uno and second was so trash? Like, seriously, 71-3? Not good. Nana was dealing in the next game as First stole Izuku to the side for a moment. "We may not know exactly what's going on out there, but we still do get a little bit of your strong emotions, and while I'm not sure if anyone else noticed, I certainly picked up on the frankly concerning amount of self-loathing." Izuku immediately flushed in embarrassment. He couldn't believe that First could actually feel his horrible feelings. He probably thought Izuku was such a weak successor for having feelings like that, and he'd be right. A sharp flick to the forehead startled him out of a spiral. "That is exactly what I'm talking about. Now, I don't know what exactly goes on inside your head, but I just want to tell you, no matter what, you aren't worthless. You aren't useless or any of the other shit people have told you. Just because you can't use One for All again yet, though you are getting closer to the threshold, doesn't mean you're helpless either. Quirkless or not, you're still a strong, kind, good-hearted hero in training. A truly worthy holder of One for All. You can't keep listening to the thoughts your traitorous brain tells you. You need to let the people around you help. Tell them what you're going through. Tell them about One for All. I think it's about time, after all you've been through. Let them help you." Izuku couldn't help the tears that rolled down his face, as First pulled him into a grounding hug. No one had ever said anything like that to him before. Maybe it was because he had never let anyone see what he was dealing with. Perhaps First was right. It wouldn't be easy. Izuku could feel the intrusive thoughts lurking in the corners of his mind. The flood of emotions he had been bottling up for who knows how long, cracking under the pressure. They would come crashing down eventually, but not just yet. Izuku still didn't know what was going on with his quirk, but he was thankful to have people that cared about him the way First seemed to. 10 minutes later, First was tackling Izuku to the ground for playing a +4 card and blocking his Uno. Notes: the score for Ghost Uno. First, 73 wins. Second, 3 wins. Third, 56 wins. Fourth, 18 wins. Fifth, 51 wins. Sixth, 65 wins. Seventh, 59 wins. Eighth, 0 wins. Ninth, 4 wins. To be fair to Izuku, he only got to play like 10 games, so that's pretty good.